Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nessie's Dead. As always, we are your hosts, Spencer and Helen.
Hello.
Hello. And I'm excited because this is our Christmas episode.
Yay, it's going to be our very first Christmas episode.
Yes, it is. It'll be a spooky Christmas.
Ooh.
I'm here to make Christmas dark again.
I love that.
That's going to be, that'll be seasonal merch.
Seasonal merch. Let's make Christmas dark again.
So, I'm very excited to dive into all of this. It's going to be another compilation episode. Everyone knows that I've become the king of spooky compilations here.
It's your thing. That's for
is.
sure. Yeah.
So, shall we go ahead and take the polar plunge into this episode?
Let's polar plunge, buddy.
Okay. So, first and foremost, we're going to get into the winter solstice celebration of Yule.
Love it.
Yule takes place from December 21st to January 1st. It is a pagan winter celebration that begins on the winter solstice, and the winter solstice is the shortest day of the year, and quite literally the darkest day of the year. Originating with Germanic tribes of Europe, it actually dates all the way back to the 5th, 6th century CE. Some scholars actually suggest that it originated from a Roman celebration called Saturnalia, which was a winter celebration in honor of the sun god that took place from the 17th to 25th of December. Being the darkest point of the year, it was used to usher the light back into the sky. So like I said, the winter solstice, December 21st, is the darkest day, quite literally the darkest day of the year, because it's the shortest day of the year. But alongside that, it is also a time like Halloween, or originally known as Samhain. It is a time where the veil between our world and the spirit world is at its thinnest, allowing for spirits to cross through much easier than it is on normal days.
Oh, my house should be very fun at that time then.
Yeah, so it's not just Halloween that we have that, it's Christmas as well, alongside a bunch of other equinoxes and solstices and other kind of cosmic alignments that allow for the portals to loosen their grip and allow for spirits to cross through easier.
It's just a party over here.
It is.
Non-stop.
So the celebration of Yule is all centered around darkness being that point in the year where everything kind of gets still, and they're really taking a moment to reflect and to look ahead of the year to come, because you cannot have light without the dark, of course. Now, some of the Yule practices include a Yule log, which involved bringing an entire tree into the home and burning it for 12 days, much like bringing a Christmas tree into your home, and the 12 days being much like the 12 days of Christmas.
How did they not burn their homes down?
Yeah, I don't know how that, I don't know the logistics of that. I just know the history of it.
That's wild.
But the Yule log was actually used to protect the home and all of those inside from dark spirits who were now crossing through and walking amongst the living.
Maybe we need to bring that Yule log back.
I think we do.
Yeah.
It's a part of Make Christmas Dark again.
It is.
Now, the Yule log was also used to usher in good luck for the year ahead.
We need all of that we can get.
Yeah. Some other festivities around Yule included dancing in a big kind of group setting around a bonfire. And while doing this, they would also call in the 4 elements: fire, earth, water, and air. Along with that, they also would have these big feasts, and they would do reenactments of historical events that correlated to the winter solstice, which a lot of this I knew before doing the research for this episode, but I was not familiar with the fact that they would do little plays about the past. I thought that was pretty cool.
That is. That's one thing I wish never died. That seems like it would have been so fun for everybody in your little area to all get together and dance. And anytime I see that scene in a movie and it's that kind of time period, it's always why'd we quit doing that?
I know.
Good times.
And of course, alongside all these Yule festivities, they would decorate the home. A lot of these practices and decorations from Yule have stuck around and been assimilated into our modern day Christmas traditions.
Mm-hmm.
One piece in particular that we're going to talk about is a little mushroom with a red cap and white dots on it. This has become a common piece of Christmas tradition in decorating, and I never understood why. There are a lot of weird things associated with Christmas, and when you dig into it, it all comes back to Yule. But specifically, I want to talk now about that little red mushroom with the white spots on it. So, a lot of what has become modern Christmas actually stems from evidence that Santa Claus was a magic mushroom wielding shaman from Europe.
I love that for him.
Have you heard of that before?
No, this is epic.
Okay, I'm
Continue.
about to blow your mind. And for anyone
Blow
who
my
has
mind.
not heard this already, get ready because we're going on a magic sleigh ride.
Love.
So this particular mushroom is called the fly agaric mushroom, and it grows under pine trees from late summer into early winter. When is Christmas? Early winter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these mushrooms have these bright red caps with little white spots all over them. They're like little warts all over the top of the mushroom. But when they're typically depicted, these white wart spots are usually done as polka dots. I think just because it's cuter looking.
Mm-hmm.
But they're essentially red with white polka dots. The name fly agaric actually comes from the fact that it was used as a pesticide and it was used to attract and then kill flies. So,
Like a poison.
yes. Now, these mushrooms are said to be the oldest hallucinogen known to mankind. And for 4,000 years, they were used to make these psychoactive potions in ancient India and Iran and pretty much all throughout Asia and Europe.
That sounds like a really good time.
I'm sure it was.
Mm.
Now, when these psychoactive mushrooms are consumed, oftentimes the consumer would start to see these little magical people that are typically referred to as Lilliputians. And this name comes from a book called Gulliver's Travels, in which the main character ingests this particular magic mushroom and is taken to a world full of these little elf like creatures, and they are referred to as Lilliputians, according to him. This effect of hallucinating these little magical people actually dates back all the way to AD 300 390 when Saint Macarius, the elder of Alexandria, an Egyptian Christian monk, had documented his experience with it. So it's this type of experience with this mushroom has been going on for quite some time, and it's a very common thing to hallucinate, which is very interesting.
That is interesting. It's kind of like when Indian shamans, they have like a certain type of hallucinogenic they use, and it usually tends to have the same effect. Not that
Mm-hmm.
effect, but it has its own effect that everybody experiences.
Yeah, and I think that says a lot. Like I personally believe that the plant medicine, when it's hallucinogenic, it is helping you to access things that are already there.
100%, yeah.
So in pre-Christian Europe and Asia, but I mean, for this, we're predominantly talking about Europe because we're talking about the Christmas origins. But during the winter solstice, the shaman would head out into the woods and collect these mushrooms while wearing a red coat with typically white fur trim and black boots. We've seen that uniform before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they would load these mushrooms into a sack that they carried with them.
Like
And
Santa's presents.
exactly. So then the shaman would head back to town or to the village or whatever to deliver these gifts to the people. And he did this by traveling on reindeer.
And then everybody's just going to trip balls.
Yeah. So the
Why did
shaman
we
would,
ever stop this tradition?
right?
Who replaced it with toys and left the adults out of this?
I know. So the shaman would deliver these magic mushrooms by coming down through a hole in the roof of the dwelling that he was entering. Now, at
The
this time,
chimney.
just like the chimney. Now, at this time, people were living in this thing called a yurt, which is like a little portable tent like dwelling, and it would have an opening at the top, and that's how they would get in and out. And they did that because the snow would get so tall. So I guess the doorway to the
Oh, yeah.
home was on top. And
Makes
that's where
sense.
the Santa Claus shaman would come through. Now, once inside, the shaman would lead those in the home on a psychedelic spiritual journey that has been described as flying on a, quote, spiritual sleigh ride.
Every single thing.
And all of this is true. This isn't like a theory. All of this is literally documented and has its
Facts.
place in history. Alongside people, the reindeer also enjoyed consuming these mushrooms. It was like their favorite treat, and they would head out into the pine forest and eat these shrooms, and they too would have a trip. And while they were tripping, they would jump around and prance, and was described as if they were flying.
Everyone's just getting high over here. High as a
Yeah,
kite.
everyone. That's what they did for the winter solstice.
Oh, why not? It's cold. It's miserable.
Another thing was that they would actually dry out these mushrooms before ingesting them, and they would do that by hanging them in these little stocking-like sacks that hung over a fire. And they would also string them out over the Yule log, which is where we get stockings and Christmas
Yeah.
Christmas tree
Garland.
decorations from.
Yeah.
Yep. So these origins, while absolutely fascinating, and while yes, I do think that psychedelic mushrooms can be kind of spooky, and Yule itself is kind of centered around darkness. It's not as dark as what we usually talk about on this show.
No. Nowhere close.
No. So with that, let's go ahead and get into something a little darker that also comes alongside the most wonderful time of the year.
Oh, you're gonna go there, huh?
Yep, we're going now to the Christmas monsters. So first up is the one, the only, everyone's favorite, and the most known of the Christmas beasts, Krampus. Pre-Christian alpine folklore creature who had been assimilated into Christian Christmas traditions, acting as the dark counterpart to Santa Claus. He hails from Germany, Austria, and Italy, and the name Krampus actually comes from the Germanic word Krampen, meaning claw. He is a goat humanoid creature who is topped off with horns. He also has the legs of a goat, claws, and is typically depicted with his long tongue sticking out.
Our favorite kind of creature.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about goat humanoids on this show.
Yeah.
I don't know why, they always come up.
We kind of got a thing for it, I guess.
Move over, Bigfoot.
Right?
So, as the stories go, Krampus will join Santa Claus, or Saint Nick, to visit children. Now, Santa Claus is known for rewarding the children who make it on the nice list, whereas Krampus has the opposite job. On December 5th, we have the Feast of Saint Nick. And then on December 6th, we have Krampusnacht, or Krampus Night. I don't speak German, so we're going to call it Krampus Night.
Yes.
And on that night, the children who did not make it to the nice list are punished by Krampus, and he will actually beat them with branches. So some towns and groups would actually get together for a Krampuslauf, or Krampusfest, which is a parade, essentially in celebration of our beloved Krampus. The biggest one being in Graz, Austria. And I am dying to go to one of these. I need to go.
Me too. Same.
From now on, it's not Christmas without a Krampus fest.
And we don't have anything like that around here, which is always disappointing.
Yeah, there's the biggest one in the States is in Washington State.
It's too far.
Yeah.
I mean, I go to Washington, I might as well go overseas. Might as well. We can fly Spirit. Maybe we'll get there.
I'm not flying Spirit anywhere.
Me neither. I'd rather fly on the wing of an American Airlines
We'll
plane.
take a broom.
Right.
Now, during Krampuslauf, which actually translates to the Krampus Run, the townspeople will dress up in horns and fursuits while carrying around branches, and they will run around the town, essentially just bringing chaos to everyone, while dressed up in their Christmas demon garb. Now, alongside the Krampuses, the festival also features participants, typically women, dressed as the Perchten. This is in reference to the alpine pagan goddess Perchta, who was referred to as the guardian of the beasts.
Oh, I did not know this.
Surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
And she would appear during the 12 days of Christmas and is depicted as either a young and beautiful woman or an old hag-like woman.
Oh, I would go as an old hag. That sounds so much fun.
Really, I'd be the young, gorgeous woman
Mm-mm.
who would like trick you and be like, "Oh, look, I'm nice and normal," and then, gotcha.
Mm-mm. I'm going as a
Merry
hag.
Christmas.
Gotta love a good old hag.
Mm. Mm.
Hmm.
Perchta was actually able to shapeshift and was typically described as having one regular human foot and then one goose foot. This one goose foot was symbolic of her ability to shapeshift and change form. The women who are dressed up as her during Krampuslauf will wear these wooden grotesque masks, and then they'll pair them with sheepskin, and they will ward off the Krampuses throughout the night and protect the children from being attacked. Now, this tradition actually started to fizzle away throughout the 1900s, and at one point, Krampus was actually banned in his homeland of Austria in 1932. This was prohibited by the Dollfuss regime under a Christian socialist party. So the Austrian government actually in the 1950s started passing out pamphlets to the public saying, quote, Krampus is an evil man. And they were starting to get too concerned that Krampus was too dark and evil and he did not belong in Christmas anymore.
He was crumping the style.
Yeah. But thankfully, Krampus and the Krampus Lofts and Krampus Fest have been brought back into modern pop culture, and we have seen a great big interest peaking now in Krampus again.
I feel like
And
people just miss the old style. People are
yeah,
looking for something more.
well, I think especially because so much of modern pop culture is kind of diluted, I feel. And I think about how even Christmas lights nowadays are not the same fun colors that they used to be. And I think
Everybody's.
people they miss culture. And so we're like dipping
Mm-hmm.
back into the past and finding things that aren't just fun pieces of culture, but rich pieces of culture, like
Mm-hmm.
a monster. There was actually a Krampus parade in San Antonio, Texas this year, and it was met with quite the protest from local church officials who were concerned that Krampus was trying to like indoctrinate children into Satanism.
I think Krampus came first, though, so I mean,
Yeah, this comes way before Satanism.
right?
Now, these modern Krampus fests actually bring quite a bit of violence alongside them. One point in Austria, there was a 50-person brawl during it that led to hospitalizations and injuries.
Jeez.
And yeah, a lot of the times the performers who are dressed up as our famous favorite Christmas demon will get attacked by people in attendance because what the Krampuses are doing is they're scaring children.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess some of the parents will get really upset and then they'll chase down that performer and beat the hell out of them.
Well,
So,
maybe don't bring your children if that's the concern.
yeah, if your children are easily frightened, do not bring them to a Krampuslauf.
There, easy. There
Yeah,
you go.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Krampus is pretty well known. Of course, he's not known by everybody, but in terms of the spooky Christmas stuff, he's probably the most famous.
I agree.
But this next creature, I don't have a lot of information on, but I found it so fascinating and amusing, I had to include it. It is not very well known outside of its homeland, but I feel like maybe we can help spread the word of this creature. So, next up, we're going to be talking about the Tomten, which is the plural form of a tomte. This is a creature that comes from Sweden, and it comes out during Christmas time. They're described in pretty much the same way like a gnome. So think of a gnome, it's a tiny little man with a long white beard and a beanie type of hat.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what this is. However, specifically, they have woolly red hats and they wear gray robes. They're kind of the darker Christmas version of a gnome.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually act as a caretaker to the house. They will find a dwelling and they will live with you in your home to make sure that everything is taken care of in your home. If you do not keep your home cleaned and organized during Christmas time, they will get very, very upset with you and have to retaliate.
I just
Now,
saw a movie based off of this. That's where they got the idea. Okay.
wow.
Yeah. I can't think of the title. It's a brand new movie that just came out, but it's like an American family, I'll wrap it up, moves to Sweden, and when they move in, there is a barn elf, and they end up pissing them off. Of course, it's a horror movie. They end up pissing them off. But okay, I see where they got that.
Wow, I did not think of everything. I did not think you would know about this one.
I didn't know until you started telling it, and I was like, oh, that's just like that movie.
Hmm. Well, one of their favorite ways to punish is that they'll sneak up on you and take a bite out of you.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And they also will take your animals. I guess a bunch of farmers in Sweden claim that these angry tomten had taken away their livestock. Now, that is all that I have on that creature, but I just thought it was so fabulous. I had to include this
Mm-hmm.
aggressive Christmas gnome that will bite you and steal your animals.
I love him.
Now, that creature is not very well known, but this next one is not as well known as Krampus, but is up there. It is one of the more famous of the dark Christmas entities.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and get into Gryla.
Is that the
Right.
witch?
No.
No.
I mean, she's kind of been depicted as a witch in the Netflix Sabrina. She was depicted as a witch,
Mm-hmm.
but
Maybe
she's
that's what
not.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, she's not really a witch.
Okay.
So Gryla is actually an ogress, so a female ogre who comes down to terrorize people in Iceland during Christmas time. Now, her origins actually come from the medieval era with a 13th century text called the Saga of Icelanders. She is described as a hideous ogre or troll-like hag, but sometimes she is also described as having horns, sometimes she has a beard, sometimes she has 15 tails, sometimes she has cloven hooves, and sometimes she even has 300 heads.
A lot of heads.
Yeah, she's like a rainbow of scary form.
She has it all.
Yeah, and
She
sometimes she has all of it. Sometimes it's just one or two of those things. It changes.
she didn't miss.
No. Now, like Santa Claus, she too sets out with a large sack. However, she is using it to collect naughty children that she kidnaps and then takes back to her cave in the mountains and will boil these children alive in a giant stew.
Mm. Yeah, I've heard of this one before. This one's terrifying if you're a kid.
Oh, I'm sure. Now, the stew is meant to sustain her throughout the entire year. However, it always runs low right around Christmas time, so she has to head back out and collect more children.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is said that she has a husband named Lipaludi, who is a troll-like creature that essentially takes a back seat while Gryla heads out to kidnap children for dinner.
He's just there for supper time.
He is. He's kind of just like her little support system back home. He's a stay-at-home husband
He's got
in
her
a spooky
back.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, she does not act alone with kidnapping children, because alongside her are the 13 Yule lads, each one representing a different form of punishment. Now, the Yule lads are these mischievous spirits who essentially play pranks on the town that Gryla is passing through. It is said that they perhaps are the first 13 children that she killed and ate, and their spirits have just kind of tagged along with her. Like I said, each one represents a different form of punishment, and their name coincides with the punishment that they represent. So there are three that I wanted to name just because they were my favorites. So we have Door Slammer, who is known for slamming doors in the middle of the night.
Hmm.
We
I have
have,
a couple of those, I think.
I think you do, but they're all
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And then we have Skur Gobbler, who steals and eats Icelandic yogurt called Skur.
Interesting flex
Yep.
on him. I mean, okay.
And the next one is my favorite, and his name is Spoon Licker, who licks spoons.
That's his mischief. He's like, I'm gonna lick that spoon.
Yeah. So they do not necessarily aid in Gryla kidnapping the child. They, I believe, are there to more so distract as Gryla grabs the kids.
Oh, gotcha. They're like, what is that licking my spoons?
Yes.
She grabs
Yeah.
the kid. Yeah.
Spoon Licker. Oh no, Gryla must be here.
Yep. by that time it's too late.
Now, alongside the 13 Yule lads, Gryla also has the Yule cat by her side. Have you heard of the Yule
Yes,
cat?
yes, I was waiting. I wanted to say earlier, I was like, doesn't she have a cat? But I was like, I'm gonna wait because if he
Yep.
leaves it out, I don't want him to be like, oh, wait, what?
So the
Mm-hmm.
Yule cat is a giant black cat with an appetite for human flesh, and he prowls around at Christmas time. This giant cat will actually eat people who are not gifted new clothing for the holiday.
He's just eating all the poor people, huh? That's sad.
Yes, it's maybe government conspiracy, it's a population control thing. So make sure you gift your loved ones new clothes this holiday season to spare them from the Yule cat. So Gryla is relatively well known, pretty famous Christmas lore.
Yeah.
This next one, though, is my favorite, actually, of these
Oh,
Christmas creatures. Very, very obscure. These are called the Kalikanzaros.
I don't think I've heard of this.
Okay, good. So these are evil creatures hailing from southeastern Europe, predominantly Greece, and they live underground, but they come to the surface world every year from December 25th to January 6th to terrorize humans. They are
Mm.
described as goblin-like humanoids with boar tusks, hairy bodies, horse legs, and giant penises.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Now, it kind of varies by region, but they're typically described as being blind. They speak with a lisp, and they love eating frogs and worms.
I have no words.
So, like I said, they live underground, but you might be wondering what exactly they do underground all year, except for that December 25th to January 6th vacation they have on the surface. Well, they're actually busy sawing the trunk of the tree that holds the earth in place, attempting to make it
Ah.
collapse, which would lead to the end of civilization. Now, the reason they surface during Christmas week is because it's the darkest point of the year, like we had talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So they notice that all of a sudden the sun is not out as long, the nights are getting longer, and they're like, oh, the light's going away, we must be winning. So then,
Oh.
after they get to the surface world, and each day it starts to get a little bit lighter, the nights get a little longer, even though if it's, it might just be a few minutes each day that the day is longer, they start to notice that there's more light, and they're like, oh no, we have to start over. So they head back underground and start over with sawing that tree.
They're never gonna get it, huh?
Nope, they're stuck in a horrible loop forever.
Ah.
Now, you can protect yourself from these monsters by leaving a colander on your doorstep.
Like what
And
you strain pasta through?
exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Most everyone has one, so most everyone should be prepared. And these are used because of the many holes, and the Kalikanzaros have to count things, but they cannot count past the number 2. So if they get to the number 3, they will have to kill themselves.
But they love counting. But two's
Yes,
their limit.
yes. Much like the Cajun werewolf, the Rougarou, which we have
Yeah.
discussed before.
At
But
least he can get to like what, 12?
you can get to 12. So to protect yourself from the Rougarou, just a refresher for everyone, he cannot count past the number 12. So you place 13 items on your doorstep, and it will keep him in a continual loop because he'll get confused after 12 and have to start over. And he'll do that until the sun comes up, in which case he has to flee back into the swamp.
These guys, two, and they're like, I quit. I can't do this no more.
Yeah, they get to 3 and they'll kill
Oh
themselves.
my gosh. But they do love
So,
counting.
yes, they'll have to count. Now, if you don't have a colander, you can protect yourself by leaving out a certain type of donut with a sausage on your roof. And while you're setting it out, you sing a certain song. I actually don't remember the song, so maybe stick with the colander trick. But this song is supposed to enchant the trees, and these creatures will come to your house. They will eat the donut and the sausage, but then be enchanted and be forced to leave.
Mm.
Now, the Yule log, like we discussed before, is another method of warding them off, and I'm sure the Yule log would actually ward off all of these Christmas monsters. However, be wary because children are susceptible to becoming one of these monsters during these 12 days that they're above ground.
Oh,
But thankfully, this can be avoided by adorning your little ones in straw or garlic, or by simply singeing the child's toenails.
like catching their toenails on fire.
Yep.
Oh,
It's either that or your child becomes a Kali Kanzaro.
or they smell like garlic for 12 days.
Yeah, the garlic and straw might be better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in Serbian folklore, it is said that these creatures will torment those who cheat on their partners and demand that you carry them around all night. That's your punishment.
Oh.
Now, that's all I have on that creature. Probably my favorite one, like I said. I think they're just so odd. I did see some reports saying that they were kind of like a Christmas werewolf. However, everything describes them more goblin-like.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're fabulous.
They are fun.
So next up, we have Hans Trapp, which is the Christmas boogeyman of France.
I don't know this one, I don't think.
Probably not.
Oh, you're like, I got some real obscure ones here for you.
Yeah. So Hans Trapp, who is actually a very real person, he was born Hans von Trotha. He was actually a German knight, born 1450 in what is now Petersburg, Germany, and he died at the age of 53 on October 26th of 1503.
Hmm.
Now, like I said, he served as a knight. He actually served as a knight in the area that is now the border between France and Germany, but at the time there was no official border. Because of all of his great work with his knightship, he was awarded the Berwarstein Castle, but he was considered a foreigner because he was from pretty far away. And because this foreigner gets a hold of this castle, the townspeople and the monks were very upset about it. I guess this really bothered him that everyone was so upset. So to retaliate, he dammed the river that ran through the town or the village, and this created a lake just on the outskirts of the region, and it cut off the water supply to the people.
Mm.
Now, of course, everyone was really upset about that.
Well,
And the monks,
yeah.
well, yeah, the monks are like, you have to fix this, open that dam back up. We need our river back. So he obliged, and he abruptly opens the dam, causing a destructive flood that essentially destroys the town. After this, he was actually excommunicated by the Pope, and because the church ruled over everything, this led to him being exiled from society. He was then painted as a diabolical figure who was accused of being a total terrible brute who made a deal with the devil. Because of his supposed deal with the devil, he became a bloodthirsty, cannibalistic, terrifying monster, of course.
As one does.
As one does. And his name ended up becoming, instead of Hans von Trotha, he became known as Hans Trapp, coming from the word trappen, meaning make noise while walking to ward off spirits, which I don't quite understand that correlation, but I think it was more so like, oh, you must you must get to trappin to ward this evil creature off, I guess.
That's confusing. I
is.
had their thing, I guess, of course.
Now, as the story goes, he ended up killing and eating a shepherd, and as punishment, he was transformed into a demonic scarecrow, who now haunts the French countryside. But when exactly does he haunt the French countryside, you might ask?
Well, when?
Only during Christmas.
Oh, surprise.
He has now become similar to Krampus in the sense that he is considered a dark counterpart to Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is coming to deliver presents to all the children on the nice list, and the children who did not make it to the nice list will be eaten by the demonic scarecrow, Hans Trapp.
Terrifying. We need to bring some of these back. Modernize it.
Make Christmas dark again.
Yes.
So, of course, Christmas has a lot of spookiness around it, naturally. And it's interesting because I've always personally felt like Christmas was naturally dark.
Yeah.
As a child, I always thought it was kind of a scary time, and I don't know if it's because nighttime was longer, or the way that you have these lights just kind of hanging everywhere in like the middle of the night, or the idea of Santa Claus coming into your house and seeing you all year, but there's something that is inherently dark about it, I
Mm-hmm.
feel. And this was actually celebrated in Victorian England with ghost stories.
I like this part. I put little ghosts on my Christmas tree this year
Oh,
because it
good.
reminds me of that. Like lots of them.
My mom has a Frankenstein on hers.
I love that.
Now, in Victorian England, it became very popular to tell terrifying ghost stories around the fire during Christmas time. This is something we need to bring back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it was already common, obviously, from everything we just talked about, it was already common to talk about scary stories. Ghost stories were a common Christmas tradition. However, it had a huge revival in Victorian England. This was partially due to the fact that publications were made cheaper, making them more available to the general public, and also at that same time, there was a big uptick in literacy. So now all of a sudden, all these people are actually able to read. And
Books are more affordable as well.
yes, exactly. Now, we also partially have the ghost story craze in Victorian England because of Charles Dickens.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote multiple Christmas stories involving ghosts, but his novella, A Christmas Carol, published December 19th, 1843, was what really helped spark the general public's love in spooky tales because this was such a popular book. It was huge. I mean,
It's
and this is still
still,
big.
yeah. I love to watch the Muppets Christmas Carol every
That
year.
one's actually scary. That terrified me as a child.
Oh, it's one
Seeing
of my
it dark.
favorites.
Probably one of my favorites as well, but it is kind of dark.
Yeah, it is.
Now, publishers would work extra hard to make sure that all of these ghost stories were ready to go by December. English writer Jerome K. Jerome actually said, quote, "Nothing satisfies us on a Christmas Eve but to hear each other tell authentic anecdotes about specters. It is a genial, festive season, and we love to muse upon graves and dead bodies and murders and blood."
Sounds like every day here on Nessie's Dead, the
Yeah.
podcast.
He knows how to do Christmas.
Yeah, he killed it.
No pun intended.
None.
Now, some scholars suggest that this revival in ghost stories in the Victorian era actually stemmed from the industrialization. These tales were essentially symbolic of holding up tradition in a time that the future was really happening in a way it never had before. People were looking at the past with kind of a nostalgic gaze amidst this rapid industrialization that was occurring and disconnecting people from their home life and from nature. All of a sudden, there are mechanical things everywhere, and it's becoming just a very different world.
It seems similar to how we have been going through like this revolve with technology.
Exactly. And people's interest in traditional Christmas stuff like Krampus, or even
Yeah.
something simple like people now being interested in buying vinyl again.
Me.
Yeah. Now, these ghost stories at this time were also kind of an escape into the mystical, something that was not proven with hard facts. Because during the industrialization, it was all like hard evidence. Everything was kind of backed by science and it was very physical and mechanical, whereas these ghost stories were quite the opposite. And it was about feeling something and knowing something is there, but you can't prove it. It's also interesting to note that the general public could actually relate to the ghost stories better than they could other kinds of stories, because before that, the main type of story was about like royalty, and it was set in a castle, or it was some kind of grand epic adventure.
It gets
Whereas
old
now,
after a while. You can't
yeah,
relate to it. Like, it's fun at first, and then you're like, I've heard one, I've heard them all.
yeah, I think the epic fantasy has its place, but with these ghost stories, they were being told inside a home. You know, the story takes place inside of a normal house, and it's something that I think everyone can experience. It's like, oh, did I just see something out of the corner of my eye? Like, all of a sudden,
Yeah,
it's very relatable.
exactly.
Now, I was thinking of going into some Victorian ghost stories, but the only thing with that was that I had to like really put on the show of telling the Victorian ghost story, which is in a very different type of English than I'm used to speaking.
Oh, yeah, it is.
So instead, we're going to go ahead and get into some ghost stories that are centered around Christmas time.
Ooh, you're just bringing it all, aren't you?
I am. So first up, we have Haunting at Roos Hall. So Roos Hall is a still standing Tudor-style manor-like house in Suffolk, England. People actually claim that it is the most haunted building in all of England and that it even has the devil's footprints on the walls inside.
Ooh,
Yeah, our kind of house.
yes.
So it was officially built in 1583. The first recorded owner was Sir Thomas Colby, and then it was owned by Sir John Suckling, which is not a great name.
No, bless his heart.
I know. And then F.W.D. Robinson by the 1890s. It has gone through a bunch of different owners and titles and whatnot, but it is now a privately owned home and not open to the public at all. However, its fame still stands. Before all of the building actually happened and all these owners and whatnot, the property itself actually dates back to 1264 when the De Roos family used the land for executions.
Oh.
And these executions actually began on December 24th of 1264. Now, a popular method for these executions was gibbeting, which was a medieval form of a public hanging. And a lot of the times the criminal that was being hung did not actually die
Mm.
right away. They just were hanging there by the neck, left for dead, and they would eventually obviously die, but it was like a really horrible way to go.
Ugh.
Now, of course, I think any place that has mass executions is going to have mass hauntings as well. The famous ghost is a woman who is dressed in, of course, a white dress. She circles an oak tree on property and is said to be summoning the devil while doing it. There's also a pasty pale girl that sits in the front window looking out at the front yard. But every Christmas Eve, a ghostly carriage rolls up to the house driven by a headless horseman. And
Ooh.
once it arrives, a phantom lady steps out. And as the stories go, if you make eye contact with her, you will go mad. And what's interesting is this apparition can only be seen on Christmas Eve. Now, people who have seen her said that it does not look ghostly at all, that everything looks very tangible, very physical. It's like right there in front of you, flesh and all, but then it just kind of vanishes before
She
your
looks
eyes.
like people.
Mm-hmm.
How do they know that they're not thinking that because they've gone mad?
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe something else would happen afterwards because you'd have to make eye contact with her first.
Oh, that's right. So you could probably just see her and be like, I didn't see nothing over there.
Yeah, so if you see her, just look away. I mean, just don't make eye contact. Don't let her look in your eyes. So next up, we have Julie the Freezing Ghost. This is set in one of our favorite places, New Orleans.
I was trying to say it before you did.
Oh, New Orleans comes up a lot on this show.
Yeah, it does.
Now, in December in the 1850s, in the French Quarter at a home, 734 Royal Street, a woman tragically lost her life and is now seasonally haunting the building. Her name was Julie, and she was an African American woman who fell in love with a white high society man named Zachary. However, he kept their relationship secret because of the time and the racial issues and whatnot. He didn't want the scandal, so he kept their love a secret. Now, it is even said that she was so distraught about this and she was just wanting to fully commit to him that she seeked out the help of our favorite person, the voodoo queen, Marie Laveau.
Yay, she makes an appearance on the Christmas episode.
She does. I don't know how, but she did.
Yeah, she did. She knows how she did.
Yeah, she knows.
Yeah.
So on a December evening, I don't know the exact date, but we do know that it was during December, during a fancy party at this home on Royal Street, Julie came out of hiding, demanding that Zachary tells everyone about their relationship and marries her.
Oh.
So he agreed to marry her, but under one condition. She must first strip her clothes and climb to the roof and stay on the rooftop throughout the entire night.
That's
And then
such
he would
an
marry her.
odd request, but I wonder, is it? No, New Orleans doesn't typically get that cold.
Well, on this night it did. It was about, I think, 50 something. It was a terrible storm. That's the big thing about it, was that it was actually
Oh,
storming this night. She was out there the entire time. There is a science to it. I don't remember all of the details around it, but she did end up dying from hypothermia due to the prolonged exposure to the elements.
oh,
But
damn.
Zachary, he did not believe that she was actually going to go through with it. And I don't think he actually knew that she was on the roof the entire time. Instead, he was playing a game of chess downstairs in the home.
And she was up there dying for their love.
Yep, clung to the chimney.
Oh,
And the next morning, her body was found. Now, on December nights, her ghost can be seen pacing the top of the roof. She is totally naked, but still wearing 2 gold earrings. Those who live in the house today have talked about hearing her footsteps on the roof during December nights, and that sometimes they actually see a chessboard that will appear only for a moment inside of the house, and that's only on a dark, stormy December night.
oh,
So, poor Julie.
I know. But also, if you live there, like, what a fun, like, Christmas story to tell people, and then they hear it, and then you're like,
Oh, living in the house?
yeah.
Yeah, the people in the house, it's like their little Christmas ghost experience.
Mm-hmm. They get to live it.
Now, I have one more tale to tell, and this is the story of the Mistletoe Bride.
Mm.
This takes place in the early 1800s. I saw one source claiming that her name was Anne Cope, but we're not 100% sure. And I also saw something else saying that it was the bride of Lord Lovell, but we're not sure. None of that was confirmed. So this couple decides to get married, and leading up to their wedding, they of course have all these parties. The day that they end up actually getting married was Christmas Eve. After the ceremony, they had all these festivities and games, one of which being a game of hide and seek. The groom was it, and everyone scurried around to their hiding places, and the bride decided that she would win the game by being the last one to be found by having the best hiding spot.
Oh no, it's not gonna go well, is it?
No. So the bride runs up to the attic and she finds a large, giant oak trunk. She thought that that would be the best place to hide, especially being kind of far from the rest of the house up in the attic. So she opens it, and I guess it was a really heavy trunk, like she struggled to actually lift the
Oh
lid.
no.
She gets inside, it closes, and then all of a sudden it locks shut. The little clamp fell and locked itself. Now, this game continues. The groom finds everyone except for his bride. So everyone decides to help find her. However, they're not able to find her. And
Oh, it's
eventually,
making me sick to my stomach a little bit.
really?
Yes. I'm so claustrophobic. This is like the worst right now for me.
Oh, sorry. So the groom was actually convinced that she had ran away and just left him. And so he was left totally heartbroken. However, he does eventually move on and remarry. But years later, he is now an old man and he decides to move out of this house. He had some family members helping to empty out the house before they move. There's another version of this story where some like great grandkids or something are playing hide and seek in the house. But
Oh.
either way, someone is up in the attic and they open this old trunk. And in it, they find the skeletal remains of the bride.
It's awful.
Now, of course, she haunts that house. And it is always around Christmas time that her ghost can be seen. And she typically is asking people to find her.
That's terrifying and sad.
I know. That's the tale of the Mistletoe Bride, which is actually a very common tale to tell in England around Christmas time. So that is all I have for you for our spooky Christmas episode. I know that I just went through a whole lot of stuff and a lot of different themes and a lot of different timelines and stories. So thank you everyone for keeping up with me. as I traverse these Christmas horrors.
I think it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was definitely one of the more fun, lighthearted episodes.
Oh, most definitely.
It, of course, still involved murder and monsters, but
Yeah.
that's what we do here.
All right. Well, I think we covered all things that are going to make Christmas dark again.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I guess with that, we'll say...
Season's greetings.
And pleasant nightmares.
Bye.
Bye.